Good afternoon to you. Mark South, HurricaneTrack.com here. Time for the Hurricane Outlook and Discussion. It is Monday, the 31st, the last day of October. Happy Halloween to you. Just a few hours. Hordes of children will go out, maybe some adults too, there's nothing wrong with that, to do some trick-or-treating. But it is the last day of the month. We're still in hurricane season. It's active out there. We have Tropical Storm Lisa now. It is going to be headed towards Belize eventually, maybe as a hurricane. That is the official forecast. And we're going to look ahead because tomorrow is November 1st. And normally people would say, all right, that's it. Hurricane season is pretty much wrapping up. November is the 6th and last month of the Atlantic hurricane season. But this year, I've got a sneaking suspicion it might be a little bit busier than we are used to seeing. And I'll explain why as we move forward. All right? All right. Good to have you along with me this afternoon. Let's start off at the National Hurricane Center. That's a good starting point. Lisa there, 40-mile-per-hour wind, pressure 1,003, so it's not particularly strong, of course. But remember, there's more to the story than just the pressure and the wind speed. These systems create rain. They can create squally conditions that can affect even small craft, medium-sized craft, and, of course, when they get really strong, very large ocean-going vessels. And it is moving off to the west, too, at a good clip at 14 miles per hour. This is what it looks like on our interactive tracking map over at the HurricaneTrack Insider site. And of course, remember, it's not a spinning little cyclone icon on a map. It. What do we mean when we say it? I've talked about this before. We are really going to sort of shift towards understanding the overall impacts even more. I've got to hammer it even more, especially after Ian. A lot of times we say it is going here, it is going there. And we need to understand when we refer to it, we're talking about the center and not the rest of the storm that covers potentially hundreds of square miles. All right? So even though it, the center of circulation, is south of Jamaica right now, there could be some squally conditions for Jamaica. I'll show you that on the satellite animation here in just a moment. But the forecast for Lisa and all of its impacts is for this to head towards Central America by way of Belize by later in the week there. This is about 4 days out or so. So let's click on the dot and it'll tell you exactly when. This is Wednesday night into Thursday, and it makes landfall there maybe overnight Wednesday night, possibly as a Category 1. So what we're going to do is tomorrow especially, and then of course on Wednesday it'll be even more important because landfall will be imminent. We will really drill down and understand better where the impacts should occur, what those impacts should be. Because right now, Lisa is still in its formative stages. It's not a hurricane yet. The wind field is not particularly impressive. So there's no reason to really start speculating on which areas could get impacted the most. I mean, if you really want to drill down and look at where the landfall is supposed to occur, there's different maps that you can do that. Ours is one of them. And it looks like it would make landfall the center of circulation just south of Belize City. Now, if this comes in exactly as forecast, your onshore flow over here to the right of where the center makes landfall, that is where you would see the highest storm surge and probably the greatest overall impacts. But this is still a few days away. It's about 3 to 4 days out, right? Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. So it's a little early to be speculating and even trying to, quote, worry about where this makes landfall exactly, because we don't know yet. The forecast cone there shows us the possibilities of where the center could be. It doesn't tell us anything about the impacts. That is where the center could be. Historically, it's inside that cone a vast majority of the time. That's what you should think of when you look at the cone, whether it's on our maps or any of the other maps that are out there, including the National Hurricane Centers. All right, looking at the satellite animation of the entire North Atlantic Basin today. There's Lisa down there. Now, this is interesting up here. Normally, you could look at that and say, hey, look, it's a sheared tropical cyclone. Why doesn't that have a name? Well, first of all, it's not a tropical cyclone, and you can tell because it's got this front attached to it. Pretty large at that. Trailing off of it, very similar to what we have over here with this dying mid-latitude cyclone over the lower 48. We'll just put a low pressure in there. Is that exactly where it is? I don't know for sure. This is just an example. So there's a mid-latitude cyclone. There's another one right there. It's got that front associated with it. So no, these are not tropical entities, because it has to be sort of its own thing, as we say, like Lisa is down here in the Caribbean Sea. And we'll take a closer look at Lisa in just a moment. Meanwhile, out in the deep tropics here, strong upper level winds rule the pattern out here, as it is very late in the hurricane season. 99% sure that we don't get any development out this way. You never say 100% until it's actually happening. You know what I mean? You open up the window, it's raining, it's 100% chance of rain. All right, and look at this. There's even some African dust coming off. Kind of unusual to see late in the season like this, but yes, some dry air and African dust moving off the coast of Africa. Zooming in here, and this helps to prove my point. Center of circulation is right in here somewhere, but north of there, Jamaica, yep, there are some rain showers. That rain could be heavy at times. Jamaica does have some elevation down here being in the Caribbean, south of at least where I am. And yeah, that could ring out some heavier rainfall. So your streams, creeks, rivers, I don't know if they call them guts there like they do in the Virgin Islands, or gullies. But the bottom line, anywhere the water can focus, you could get some flash flooding. So keep that in mind, especially if any one of these bubbling thunderstorms like that one bubbles up right over you. That could be problematic with some very heavy rain in a short amount of time. Same is true for our friends over here in the Cayman Islands, although this area should be far enough north to escape the worst of the conditions overall as Lisa organizes and moves by. But you never know. You got to watch this up there. We have a few friends via social media that'll be watching this very closely from the Caymans, and we'll just have to see how close this gets with some of those impacts. Got to learn to talk again. All right. So the vorticity signature. This is interesting because Lisa is a storm, but look, it's elongated. It's got that sort of linear. Let's use white here to make it pop better. It's kind of linear in its look there. I'm not even sure how you classify that. It's like a, I don't know, like a caterpillar or whatever. It just doesn't, it's not bundled and particularly round in its appearance, and unless it does so, it won't strengthen very quickly. You've got to get these things to be more concentrated, more bundled. That's what tropical cyclones do. Whereas these types of features over here, these mid-latitude storms associated on these fronts, there's the other one here, they're more spread out over a much larger area, whereas a tropical cyclone, and I've talked about this a lot, I know, but just reiterating the fact, tropical cyclones need to bundle that energy and really focus it, and when they do so exceedingly well, you can get a very, very intense system like we saw, of course, with Ian and numerous other examples over history. All right, so again, the dashboard here from Tropical Tidbits, very, very helpful. Infrared satellite shot here, just a still frame. I'll just use the dashboard as it is. There's that one area of deep thunderstorm activity, some, a few showers and maybe embedded heavier rain bands over here. The deepest of convection down. Hey, look at that. I know you're going to think I'm crazy. That almost looks like Groot from the Marvel characters, right? There's an eye, that funky looking top to the head. Anyway, it is Halloween, and I'm seeing characters. Hey, I'm going to see a lot more tonight when I go trick-or-treating with my kids, and maybe one of them will be Groot. So there you go. Maybe I should put Groot in the hashtag of today's update. Nevertheless, back to the task, Mark. There is our storm, not very well organized, and the infrared sort of helps to show that very nicely as well. The track guidance, and we'll zoom in on this for you. Nice and tightly clustered there, which helps with confidence. I know it's not good when the confidence is for your area, but it is good for forecasting overall. We do want to see a high confidence in the forecast products, and this helps when you see the guidance envelope that tightly clustered going forward. All right, some important notes here. Water temperatures at least 28 Celsius all through the area where Lisa will be tracking. That's about 82 Fahrenheit. That's plenty warm for it to strengthen if the upper level winds and other thermodynamic processes allow dry air. And it's not just the presence of dry air. If that dry air gets injected from strong upper level winds, maybe, and even mid-level winds, kind of pushing it into the circulation. Think about if you have a steamed up mirror and you just let it sit there. You get out of the shower, the mirror is nice and steamed up. It takes a while for it to dissipate. But if you turn on a hair dryer, it is both what? Hot, dry, and it's moving. And it helps to rapidly evaporate that moisture on your mirror. Think of that as shear. The shear injects that dry air, really kind of shoves it in there, and it helps to collapse those thunderstorms as they develop. We don't know. Is that going to happen? Is it going to stay disheveled like it looks right now? We'll just have to wait and see. But I do want to just make sure people are aware, without being too alarmist, that yes, the water temperatures are plenty warm through here. Lisa's located about here now, so water temperatures won't be an inhibiting factor. And as a hint to what I talked about earlier about November, this is the 26 Celsius line for the western Atlantic right here, and pretty much everywhere that you see south of that black line that I've drawn in is warm enough for continued hurricane, tropical storm, depression, whatever you want to call it, activity, tropical cyclone activity, we'll just call it that blanket term, going into November. So don't be surprised, and I'll show you some more reasons why I think November could be active, more active than we're used to seeing perhaps. And the upper ocean heat content, a couple of pockets here as Lisa progresses on towards Belize, where you get very high, not as high, very high, and not quite as high right before landfall. But overall, the upper ocean heat content values are generally on the right-hand side of the scale, meaning that the path all the way to landfall here in Belize is one that'll take it through a pretty energized area of high ocean heat content. All right, looking at the GFS real quick, this is the 850 millibar level. This tells us a lot about the structure. There it is, kind of loosely defined overall. Move this out into time. It takes a while, but then right before landfall here, 36 hours out, Tuesday night into Wednesday, the GFS suggesting that Lisa finds some favorable conditions and strengthens just before landfall. And I want to point out something. If that happens, a strengthening system, even going from a tropical storm to a hurricane, tends to have more exaggerated effects. You know what I mean? They're more pronounced because the whole system is convectively active, and you can get a lot more downburst of wind. So just keep that in mind, a strengthening system. Now luckily, we're probably not talking about strengthening from a 2 to a 4 or something like that where it becomes very frightening. That's not what we're talking about. But even a 50 mile per hour tropical storm strengthening to an 80 mile per hour hurricane as an example, that uptick in activity tends to bring that energy down to the surface a lot more efficiently. So just keep that in mind as we watch this going forward. And then it makes its way inland over northern Guatemala there and kind of rains itself out. That too can be, of course, a problem. Rain is an impact. Let's look at it from a slightly different perspective. This is your 10-meter wind, or about 35 feet in the atmosphere or so, and your sea level pressure, your mean sea level pressure. And the GFS moves it along, strengthens it there, just near landfall, not particularly strong, 1,005. So honestly, if this doesn't become a hurricane yet, I said this yesterday, I can kind of flip it. Yesterday I said don't be surprised if it becomes a hurricane, and I think that's still good. I think I said, what, 60% was my probability on that? That's what I was thinking. Sure, it could still become a hurricane. You know, intensity forecasting is just very, very difficult. GFS not doing much with it. We'll see. I tell you, those upper ocean heat content values, if it does find even 12 to 16, 18 hours of favorable atmospheric conditions, it could strengthen a lot more than what we're seeing here. I just want to show you this on the GFS. Not a big wind event, at least on the latest version of the GFS. Now let's go back to this for a minute, because this gets us into November, obviously. This is November 3rd in the afternoon. Lisa is inland here. I'll draw it for you, over Central America. What about the rest of the Atlantic? This is only a few days into November. Well, let's take a look and see real quick. Just kind of move this out. A lot of energy starts to gather. This is about 6 days out. This is really interesting. Sort of this huge gyre of energy down here, this big circulation over here, down at about the 5,000 foot level. Normally we see that over here, and we call that the Central American Gyre, or a CAG event. And that gyre can kind of be like this rotating grapevine that spits off ripe fruit. That's a good way to put it. And when it does so in the Western Caribbean, these systems can rotate around these areas of concentrated vorticity, and you get a tropical cyclone to develop. We usually see that early in the season and late in the season. For some reason, the gyre is not over Central America on the model here, and the Euro shows this as well. It's setting up across the eastern and central Caribbean, south of a very vigorous area of high pressure right there. You see it very well defined. Big high pressure area, the Bermuda High, nice and strong in early November. This will be nice for the southeast United States. Very, very mild to start November, but lurking south of there is this gyre, this big incubator, so to speak. A lot of different analogies and metaphors that I could use. So what happens, let me just show you this. I'll take me away. Let's just take it out all the way to the last, all the way to the end of the model. Look, it starts to generate something. That's the thing. There's a huge area of energy down there, and it tries to create all kinds of mischief. Now, this is an enormous area of energy and vorticity in the atmosphere, and the model is trying to figure out what to do with it. So don't take any of these runs at face value. For example, this one creates some kind of a storm and sends it in towards just south of Jacksonville, Florida. Is that believable? No. But it is interesting to see this huge pattern. Like I said, it's like an incubator, a grapevine, whatever you want to call it. And any one of these little areas of concentrated vorticity would have to be watched as they rotate around if they find a favorable setup. And remember, going back to this, water temperatures are warm enough all in that area that yes, something could develop as we move through the first week to 10 days of November. It wouldn't surprise me at all, and the pattern starts to show it. All right, so just something to keep in mind as we get into the last month of the hurricane season. It is still the last month of the hurricane season for a reason. It's still very much hurricane season. All right, so we'll be watching Lisa as it tracks towards Belize, and we will certainly be on top of that. I'll have an update in the morning. Again, I know a lot of people down in Belize watch our YouTube feed here, and they got questions they want to know. So I'm going to do a morning update tomorrow, and then just specifically on Lisa, and then tomorrow afternoon's hurricane outlook and discussion, we will go into more detail on Lisa. And then again, it'll be November tomorrow, so we'll look ahead at some historical past tracks of some infamous November hurricanes, and continue to look at what might be coming with that very interesting pattern that I showed you that could be setting up as we start the 11th month of the year. All right, let me get this online for you. As always, thank you for tuning in. Please do me a big favor, and you. It helps me to help you, and that's Jerry Maguire said in that movie from, what was that, 96 or 97? Seriously, though, hit the subscribe button. It doesn't take much effort. Make sure you put the notifications on so you get notified when we post a video. And please help the algorithms. We are an algorithm-driven world. Like the video if you don't mind, the little thumbs up. It does help. It does make a difference. And I and everybody else that watches this appreciates it as we do grow and we start to do more and more stuff. All right? Have a good rest of your Monday. Be safe out there if you're going out trick-or-treating. And even if you're doing the adult trick-or-treating, be even more safe because, well, you have to. All right, that's it for me. Have a good rest of your Monday. I'm Mark Sudduth. I'll be back with you more tomorrow.